Hi everyone, welcome to the Making Comics for Kids panel. I'm Jill and we are here thanks to Kapow and Halfcut. In case you're not aware, over half the world's forests have been destroyed. So every August, a fundraising team go half-cut to raise awareness and funds to protect existing forests and replant trees. Usually that entails shaving half your beard or your head, but if you can't do either of those, we welcome you to braid half your hair, dye it a crazy color, or even just add some flowers or foliage to it. This year is extra special because once the purchase of Daintree Lot 155 is completed, the land will be given back to the traditional owners to manage for long term. For more information, visit halfcut.org or click the link in this video. So today I am joined by writer Karen Beliharz and artists Lesley and Louie Joyce. Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome. So just for our viewers, if you could each take yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been making comics for. Karen, we'll start with you.
Sure. My name's Karen. I live in Sydney. I'm a writer and editor and occasionally edit comics as well. I've been making comics for, goodness, it's probably been about 10 years now since I made my first one. I've done a couple of anthologies, one about depression, one for children called Monsters, and a full-length science fiction graphic novel called Eternal Life, and then a few smaller bits and pieces.
Amazing. So next we'll go to Lesley.
I don't actually know how long I've been making comics for. Because I feel like I've never done it officially. I've never started doing it officially. So I've done a couple, one or two published ones, and then I mostly do a lot of just comic strips based on family and things that I've sort of done. But I'm currently writing one with my agent, who's been pushing me to do it for, I don't know, 6 years. So finally getting to that very, very slowly.
That's very cool. And Louie, tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm Louie Joyce. I'm an illustrator and comic creator. I'm based in Wollongong. I have been making comics. I mean, it's a tough question. I've been drawing and making comics since I was a kid, really, as far back as I can remember, but really focusing on it for the past 10 years or so, and publishing stuff and self-publishing and things like that. I've worked on a bunch of short stories. I've worked on a book called Hat Haven, which came out last year with writer Norm Harper. Past the Last Mountain. I do short stories. I write some of my own stuff sometimes as well. So yeah, I love making comics, and I'm excited to be here to talk about it.
So you guys all have quite a bit of experience, it's safe to say.
Yeah. I feel like I'm not as disciplined. I feel like, mine is very varied over the years. And even this year, it's been a mixture of working in film and games and a bunch of other stuff. So I feel like I'm still kind of wading into comics a little bit. But I'm very excited to be here. I don't know why.
Well, Lesley, how would you say it's different to approach something like a comic book compared to working on movies or books for adults?
I mean, I don't know if it's completely different in that the processes can be very similar in that, you've got your brief. I mean, working on film and TV in that, depending on what aspect, it's a lot more disparate. So often you're kind of isolated into very specific fields. You're not working on kind of lots of different things. Whereas with telling a story through comics and books, you get your hands into everything. So you're breaking down story elements, you're designing the characters, you're doing the research, you're looking at layouts, you're doing concept work, then you're doing the kind of the dummies and all that, so that you kind of really get your hands dirty with everything, whereas you are only working on one of those things if you're doing film, television, and even sometimes games. So either you'll do backgrounds or character stuff. So in that way, it's different, but the actual process of just creating, I'd say, is pretty similar.
Okay. So Louie, how would you approach a children's comic compared to something more adult?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. I don't think that there's like an obvious difference in approach from the get-go. I think my creative process would be quite similar for both of those things. Obviously, it's just down to there's an extra layer of consideration in terms of content, what I'm representing and how I'm representing it, and how that's going to be interpreted by whatever age group it is that I'm targeting, or if I want it to be, my favorite kind of stories are the ones which which are all ages stories. So like I was raised on like Studio Ghibli films, and those I think are really fantastic examples of what many people consider to be kids stories, but like just have something in there for somewhat everyone, like people of all ages. And so when I'm focusing on my work, I really want, even if it's a kid's story, I really want there to be things in there that appeal to, the person that's going to be reading it to that kid, or an older brother or a parent or whatever, or sister, whatever it is. So yeah, I try to think about that aspect of it. How can I make this appeal to my main target, but also have a wider appeal beyond that, so people can enjoy it together?
That's really nice. Karen, do you have a particular approach to writing children's stories?
I think it helps, I guess, thinking about the characters, and usually the characters are obviously kids, because kids, I think, identify more with other kids and things, and just thinking about the sort of concerns that preoccupy kids. So yeah, the anthology that I did, Monsters, had stuff about like being scared of the dark, which, very kid focusing, or even there was a whole story that came out of just the fact that trying to feed my children certain foods, they just go, ew, yuck. Even my 6-year-old now, he'll ask every single night, what's for dinner? And I'm kind of like, why do you ask? Because you always say, ew, yuck, kind of thing. So that sort of thing. And I think also just like bearing in mind there's some themes that I probably, would not necessarily go down just because they're not age appropriate. I'm just thinking about, that sort of difference between, I guess, comics that are more for the younger kids as opposed to, say, middle grade stuff. Like I read Guts recently by Raina Telgemeier, and while that dealt with the, in a way, kid preoccupation with and worry around vomit, but it also had stuff about like menstruation and growing up and mental health type things, which is quite different to, say, like this one, Night Lights, which is kind of borderline, because in a way the main character is a child and she goes to a primary school and she's into drawing and stuff, but then she does have this friend who's sort of a bit imaginary as well, and it almost like brushes up against that border of, oh, maybe they've gone too far in terms of creepiness. And certainly my eldest, when she read it, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, was seriously creeped out. Still loved it, but seriously creeped out. So just, I think, being a bit more careful with slightly more teen or even adult themes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So how many of you here are parents?
Yeah, all of us.
Everyone. So how has being a parent changed the way that you want to tell stories? Whoever wants to start.
We have less time.
Yeah,
Less time. You've got to be direct. Just get in there. Be efficient with your storytelling.
I think a lot of the stuff.
I think.
You go, Karen.
Oh, thanks. Just in terms of, I guess, the things that preoccupy my children, sometimes make their way into the stories. Like Monsters came about because my eldest was really scared of the dark. She was 3 at the time and saying, Mummy, I'm really scared of monsters. And I'm kind of like, how does she even know about monsters? I mean, obviously, there's Monsters Inc. and whatnot, but like she would just see them everywhere. Like if we'd just be out after the sundown, she'd just be completely freaked out and seeing monsters everywhere. So yeah, and also trying to write stuff that I know would amuse them. That's kind of, I think, changed things a little bit for me. Plus, they are your, fiercest critics in a way. Like, if there's something wrong and they don't like it, they will tell you straight away. And and sometimes, like, I read a lot more comics for kids now because of my kids, and so I have this massive collection of middle grade and younger kind of comics, and I will buy stuff and give it to my kids to read and say, oh, how was that? And they go, yeah.
I find as well it's interesting watching. I mean, I've got quite a young son. He'll be 2 in October, but people ask, like you're kind of rediscovering all these things and all these childhood things. But I do see that in other mums. But I think, and I'm sure that Karen and Louie have this sort of similar thing in that when you're working in the creative field, and especially in sort of things geared towards children anyway, like children's books and that sort of thing, you always kind of had your foot in your childhood and tapped into that kind of imagination and creativity that you had as a kid. It just it doesn't really go away. So I think if I was doing something different, I would definitely be rediscovering all this stuff, and it would be interesting to see it through my kid's eyes. But I found that I've had to like to step back a bit and try and see like his different experiences and what he kind of, it's an interesting sort of thing to watch.
Yeah.
And how's it for you, Louie?
Yeah, I've definitely, so before I had my first son, I was definitely making stuff that was geared more towards older audiences. But since having kids, as a huge thing for me now is wanting to make stories and create things that they can experience or we can experience together, and that I can read to them or whatever, and that they can see themselves in. And so a lot of my work now and a lot of my thinking about what I'm doing is very much more geared towards the younger kids audience, and that's so much because of just the time that I spend with them, the stories that we read together, the play that we do together, and just seeing the, like Leslie's right, I've always kind of been to a degree a big kid anyway in a lot of ways, but being able to really go into that and re-experience it with my kids and play and tell stories and go for a bushwalk and experience the ways that their kind of minds work is really, really creatively inspiring. So they're a huge inspiration for kind of everything that I do these days on a whole bunch of different levels.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the plays thing as well, like just children's capacity to play, and just, we come to, I suppose, art with all this judgment and criticism and voices in our head, but with kids, they just do it and have fun and aren't afraid to try stuff. And I find that really, really cool. Like, there's no sort of self-consciousness there. My eldest has started like seriously making comics, and
cool.
We put together a volume of them last year. It was me trying to kill a whole bunch of birds with one stone. I thought I need presents for teachers and for grandparents and whatnot, and my eldest had started drawing comics using this character that she created called Mr. Monster, and so we made this book called Mr. Monster and Friends. And since then, she started working on the second volume. She seriously has this whole pile of comics that I have not had time to do anything with. And she's like, when are we going to publish the second one? And I'm like,
That's so
soon,
cool.
sometime. I know. And she started working on volume 3 as well. It's really, I've created a monster. Literally.
So do any of you use your kids to get feedback on projects that you're working on?
Oh, if I haven't drawn a car, my son is not interested. I mean, I was trying to show him something. I've been working on a game that's dogs, and I thought we have a dog, so I thought, oh, he's going to love this one. And he really honestly just looked down and was like, cars? I'm like, no cars. He's like, I was like, yeah. Thanks.
My kids can be hard to impress as well sometimes. So, or they're like polar opposites. One is really easily impressed, and I don't trust what he says, and the other one's like, the other one's just doesn't care. But sometimes I'll get him at a good point, and now the thing is, like, I'll find my eldest. He's really good at just sitting down and looking through comics, and he can do it for ages. And he can't read yet, so it's all visual. He's like just experiencing the visuals in those books, and occasionally I'll like flip one of my things, like put my book in there and see if that's like something, if it kind of can hold his attention in the way that some of these other books do. And with Happhaven, I was pleased to see that he seemed pretty into it. So if he's not into something, he doesn't give it a bar of attention. So I was happy with that.
I find as well, I'm, if anything, not so much a critic, is that more of a champion, in that I'm learning to draw more simply and not, because I'm a total perfectionist and I definitely have always been hung up. And especially once it's your job, you're kind of, even just playing Pictionary with your family, there's this like expectation all of a sudden, like, the drawer, so she's going to win. You're like, oh, but you have to draw simply. It's different. And just seeing what he can just get, like, I can draw a car with no wheels that is the simplest, most kind of like bad drawing. And he immediately is like, that's a car, that's made my day. I'm happy now. And I'm like, okay, so learning to let go a bit as well has been really nice. And not have to draw like, perfect. It's been cool.
That's a really unique perspective. I never really thought of something like that. But it must be refreshing to be able to let go a bit. Yeah,
it's especially when it's your job and you do have critics all the time saying like, that's not good. We don't like that. That's not a whole thing. Like, but it is. Having someone who's just like, yeah, I love it. Like, you did this drawing for me and I'm happy. I'm just like, thanks.
Makes it worth it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So Karen mentioned a few things in her writing that she's done before, like in the past, issues like mental health and talking about menstruation. Is there a perspective that you have now as a parent with the way that you grew up and wanting to like help make it easier for your children and in your writing and storytelling?
Yeah, I think I was really lucky. My sister and I primarily were raised by a very strong feminist mum. And so for me, it's been more, not so much changing, but wanting to carry on that legacy and trying to make sure it's been different. I think you grow up just when you picture having kids, I think you kind of picture having sort of the same sex because you know that experience. So having a boy has been really interesting and just wanting to make sure that he has the most kind of well-rounded, accepting upbringing of, just going in whatever direction he wants and liking whatever he wants and just kind of, really fostering that acceptance and diversity and all that kind of stuff that big topics of today as well has been really important.
Yeah.
I don't know how to.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Louie.
No, go ahead, Karen.
Oh, okay, sorry. I don't know how to make it happen, but like certainly for a while my kids are both saying that they want to be artists or writers or something. And I know that having a creative career in this climate is extremely difficult. And it just seems like every single day you hear about something else happening, like the New South Wales Writers Centre was defunded, or the Australia Council's lost funding, or all around the place there's opportunities for art shrinking. But I'd really love it if they felt like at least they've got art as something that would give them pleasure and joy, even if they can't necessarily make a career out of it, or that they feel like they could have a go at trying to make a career out of it, even though it is really difficult. Like I'm not in the same position as Lesley and Louie in terms of my creative work, but that they hopefully could have, that the avenues are a bit clearer for them. Rather, I feel like when I was growing up, it wasn't clear at all how on earth you got a creative career. And so I was always sort of nudged towards more conventional kind of careers, but I'm hoping that they won't be, especially as, if robots take over all the conventional jobs, then, there'll be a need for more artistic jobs.
True. Louie, do you find it important to use your voice to bring up topics that are important to you?
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing to do as a creator, and it's something I kind of go between. Like a lot of my drawing is stuff that I do, and because it's something that I've done since I was a kid, it is very much can be something I do just for fun, just for pure enjoyment, just for me doing it for myself. But I do, like this rollerblading stuff because I love rollerblading. It's awesome. But yeah, with the kind of stories that I want to create going forward, and especially since having children, like my kids are mixed race, so I it's important for me to create stories that they see themselves represented in, and so I want. And people like them, I want that kind of diversity and representation to be out there. And it's just as important in the stories that I pick to read to them, to experience them, that they're experiencing different voices, different cultures, as many as possible, so that they have. I mean, I think like I was lucky in that I did get a bit of that growing up, but like when you look at a TV landscape or a film landscape, it's still. We all need to be doing better, and so that's something I try to keep in mind going forward.
Yeah, that's definitely been like, I've been the opposite in that, like I'm realizing that I'm raising a possibly straight middle-class white male. I'm just like, you need to be the most accepting, like you got to bring everyone with you because you have the most privilege, like got so much work, like let's get stuck into it. So yeah.
Question for Karen. What's the process like finding an artist to work with to bring your ideas to life?
Well, I'm fortunate in that I have a whole bunch of friends who are artists, and I try and write for their strengths where possible. Like for a little while, I was going to a church with a whole heap of visual artists. And so, yeah, that was a natural thing to be able to talk to them about projects and collaborate with them. And since then, I've just met a whole bunch of different people through like the convention circuit or just comic circles, which are quite small. And yeah, being able to collaborate with people is really, really cool. But it's different for every single person, because obviously every person is different. But where possible, I try and play to their strengths, and like Kieran Gillen, often he's a comics writer. Sorry, he will often will say like, "What do you want to draw?" and try and incorporate that into like whether it be fight scenes or dragons or something like that. And I think that's always a really good rule of thumb, because then it's fun for the artists, and it's not like you must draw this kind of thing. Like sometimes if I don't know who I'm working with initially, then I will be a little bit more, I suppose, dictatorial in terms of, because I feel like I need to see it on the page for it to make sense. So I know that it works, but like, yeah, where possible, when I'm actually collaborating with someone, I try to make room for them and for their ideas and things.
Wonderful. So what's everybody working on at the moment? Is there something that's keeping you occupied during COVID?
I'm doing a few different things. So I've got, I'm doing some background and layout work for a TV series. And then, as I mentioned, that board game, which has been super fun because I just get to draw dogs all day. And then just a couple series, so book work and commissions as well, just to kind of, get as much stuff as possible going, because it was a bit of a dip there for a while. So I was just reaching out to everyone, like, Christmas is coming, surely you need some presents, like why not a family portrait? That's
a really good idea.
Just doing whatever I can.
Yeah, what am I working on? I'm coloring a comic series called Verge, which will be coming out. I'm not exactly sure of the date, but that's been a cool experience because it is. I'm just working as the colorist. Normally, I illustrate and color my own work, but in this case, I'm coloring someone else's illustrations, and so that's a major kind of learning curve, as it's something I've not done before. But it's also been a lot of fun to kind of work with this other artist and writer and editor and stuff, and kind of bring this book to life. It's kind of a cool sci-fi story, and so that's been fun. Other than that, I've been doing like freelance storyboarding. I've got an animated project that have been working on for a while, and hopefully we'll be finishing that up in the coming months. So yeah, I lost a lot of my a lot of my teaching work was cut because I usually run a lot of workshops in libraries and at events and things like that. So a lot of that has gone down due to COVID, and that's a shame because I really love that stuff, and that a lot of that is working with kids and teaching them kind of visual language and comics language and getting to see their excitement about making comics and kind of engaging with that medium. So I'm missing that stuff, and I'm kind of starting to look at other options for, you know, delivering those classes online or things like that. But yeah, kind of jumping all around the place with stuff at the moment.
Yep.
It's
And
hard
Karen,
to do.
oh, sorry, yeah.
So I was going to just quickly say off the back of Louie, it's really hard to do classes for kids online.
Yeah,
So you rely. I didn't realize how much I relied on just listening to them and just even watching them and seeing, okay, are they following this? Like, do I need to slow down? Do I need to change tactics? Are they getting restless? Like, I feel for all the teachers trying to teach any kids like under 13 online, because it is tough.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame, because that's why I hadn't thought about doing anything sooner, because I just don't think it would fulfill the same kind of, like, it just wouldn't work as well through an online kind of system. But, you know, this is the new world for now.
Yeah.
Hey, Louie, can I ask about your personal projects? Sorry if I missed that. So I do have a longer form graphic novel which I've been developing for a while, and it's based on my memories as a kid growing up. My dad worked in the theatre. He was a director at a community theatre company, and I would go there after school every arvo and kind of hang out, and so this is kind of the setting for this graphic novel. But the story itself is about just a kid who is in this space and is experiencing these kind of... It was kind of stemmed from seeing my eldest son and his, as I was saying, his play. Like he when he plays, he's in it. He's like, he's fully committed. Stuff is happening. I don't know what's going on. There's sound effects. He's like zooming around everywhere. It's amazing to watch. And if I'm trying to get his attention when he's in that, it's just so hard. Almost the best way for me to get to him when he's in that is for me to become a character, to go into that world that he's experiencing. And so, yeah, seeing him do that was like, it reminded me that I think that's what I was like as a kid as well, and of these times, these afternoons that I had at this place. So I'm creating this kind of story based around my childhood, but the main character in it is as much my son Dashel, and my son Silgriv is now also influencing that as well. So it's really cool to kind of take that trip down memory lane, but like bring it into bring that influence from me being a parent, from me being a father, from my son and the person he is and who he's becoming, and how he plays and all this stuff. It's really exciting, but it's still like super early days. So I haven't been doing as much on it as I would have liked so far, but it's definitely one of my main kind of priorities going forward. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's wicked.
Yeah. What are you working on at the moment, Karen?
Oh, nothing comics related, unfortunately.
No.
I'm writing. I started writing a YA fantasy series, and I did that thing where I started writing the first book, and then it became extremely long, and it went, okay, it's 2 books. So I'm currently working on the second book at the moment, and the way I describe it is kind of samurai magicians at magic school who are trying to defend their land from an invading empire, and it's kind of awesome. The world is, oh, thank you. The world is sort of resembles Edo era Japan, which means I go down all these research rabbit holes, some of which are probably only very tangentially related, but very, very fun. And even thinking about magic school, but like not in a Harry Potter sense, but more in a sort of more Asian influenced sense is, kind of fun and interesting.
Nice. That sounds awesome.
Now, Lesley, I know that you've worked with Peter Heller on a book. Can you tell us a bit about illustrating for that?
Was he heaps funny?
So we met prior to starting the series. We met once over dinner. That was interesting. He turned out to be just like someone that, you know, it would definitely run in our, like, my circles of like a nerd that likes movies. And so we just basically talked about movies and stuff. And then that's pretty much it. I haven't seen or heard from him since, and I've just been getting ready. And usually I get them very late. I haven't read the books before I get to illustrate them. I think we've been doing this I was just talking to Penelope, my editor, and we've been working on these for like 4 or 5 years, I think. So it's really lovely. I love the relationship we have now. It's very easy. They trust me, which is nice. Working on that trust is one of the things I don't enjoy about this job and it's often what it's something you just have to do all the time, especially because once a client trusts you, it just opens up that creative process so much more. You just get to play. Whereas I find when it's dictated, that's when drawings just become really stiff. So that we've kind of really broken through that, and we're on the 6th and final book now. So it's been a long journey. But yeah, we're kind of, I'll be happy in a way to say goodbye to the characters, but sad because it has been it's been a huge learning curve for me, especially it's been like a good chunk of my professional career. So I can even just look at the first book compared to this one, I can see like a ton of progress that I've made. Yeah, it's been fun. I think we're working on, I think the last one is going to be set in medieval times. So yeah, should be good.
It must be satisfying to say goodbye to that, put a close to something you've worked on for so long.
It's the longest I've ever done one thing where I've been drawing like the same characters. And that's been probably the toughest thing. There's been breaks in between, which have really helped. But yeah, it's really hard, especially. And I remember listening to, not that I compare myself with Pixar at all, but listening to them talk about when they worked on the final or the newer versions of Toy Story, having to honor the first Andy that they had, but also recognize the fact that they've come so far with their modeling and rigging and designing capabilities, and just being like, we don't want to go back to the past because it's really hard to go backwards in your creative kind of evolution. But at the same time, we can't completely just kind of get rid of it. So that's been an interesting back and forth with the publisher as well about I have to make the characters look the same, but I can't go backwards in my skills, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I draw based on my skills. It's not my style isn't a choice. It's just something that happens. So that's been really tough. So yeah, it'll be, again, I'll look forward to getting rid of that part.
So we know that Louie loves rollerblading. What does everybody else do to, get away from the desk while you're working? What's your exercise of choice, everyone?
Take up rollerblading.
I worry about.
Oh, I would put that in my face if I went rollerblading.
It's fun.
Do you worry about falling on your hands though and like hurting your wrists?
Yeah, I'm actually terrified of it, and I keep meaning to buy wrist guards, but I haven't done it yet. But so I've got knee pads because I'm doing like skate park skating as well. So I'm like leaping through the air and trying to do grinds and all this kind of stuff. I'm really, because I used to do it when I was like 12 and something's happened and I'm doing it again. But yeah, I'm terrified, and I mainly just make sure I fall on my knees instead of my hands. But I've hurt my ribs, I've hurt my shoulder, I've hurt my hip. I'm hurting myself a fair bit, but I haven't hurt my wrist yet, so I'm all right.
I
Teaching your kids.
like rock climb, and even that I
Oh,
found that
nice.
I had to make sure I could only do it for a certain amount of time, because even just like bouldering, the skin on my
Yeah.
fingers was so sensitive that I couldn't hold my pen. So I was like,
Wow.
I can only do this for a certain amount of time, otherwise I can't work. Like there goes a day of work.
Yeah.
Getting old sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm boring and I go to the gym and do weights and Pilates, and that's it, because I'm rubbish at doing exercise by myself. I have to be with other people, and yeah, just to share the suffering.
It's group motivation.
That's fair. I can't do any kind of like, I wish I could get into yoga and that kind of thing, because I think that would be super beneficial, but I can't meditate seriously. Like when I say that I still am a child, I really don't know. Like I just sit there in hysterics, ruining the classes for everyone. So yeah. Monday.
You've seen there's a YouTube channel, it's yoga for kids, and I think it's called like Cosmic Kids or something, and every single
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, she kind of incorporates a story in with the yoga poses, which is quite clever, and then they have different green screen backgrounds and things. It was very, very popular during lockdown.
Yeah, we did a bunch of them. We did this Pokemon ones, Star Wars. We did a few. The kids got into it, but then they just ended up sitting there staring at the thing and not doing any stretches, and I'm the only one doing it, and I'm like, this is
Yeah. I'm afraid I have to go, so I'll say goodbye.
good to see you,
much,
Karen.
I think we'll say goodbye to everyone now. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thanks for having
Everyone,
it.
if you can spare some dollars, please donate to Half Cut. Thank you so much, Karen, Lesley, and Louie. Have a great afternoon, guys.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.